everybody, we're gonna get going.
Yeah, we have 9.
So do you wanna do the roll call, please?
Mr. Arcuri?
Yep.
I know he's here. Mr. Bova?
Here.
Mr. Brodsky? He's here.
Yep.
Mr. Core? No. Mr. Coyne? He's
Present.
here. Mr. Delia?
Here,
Mr. Ford? Mr. Lewis? He's not. Mr. Karam?
Here.
Mr. Matolo? Mr. Sampson?
here.
And Ms. Sesney.
Here.
We have 9.
Okay.
Thank you. You have the draft November 16, 2020 minutes in your packet. Is there a motion to approve? Make a motion.
I'll second.
Who's seconding? Mark?
You got a lot of people for that one, Sue.
Yeah, I know. Is that Denny and Mark?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any additions, corrections, deletions?
No.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Thank you. And now for one of our favorite activities, the election of officers. The officers could click off and you all could have a nice discussion if you'd like. If someone else would like to run for a particular office, you have, of course, the opportunity to do that.
We're not using domain software.
I'd like
As an officer, do you get the code to the men's room?
I don't even get in the men's room.
Okay, then, I don't want it.
I
Can
can't,
I make a motion?
to,
I'll make a motion.
to
I'll second.
re-elect all the existing officers.
I second that. I'll second too.
what was that motion?
To re-elect everyone who holds the office, whatever office, to continue status.
And there was a second on that?
Yes, I second that.
Any further discussion, last chance? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Don't be bashful. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, and thanks for your continued confidence. And Denny, by the way, Sue has to tell me that code to get in the men's room, and I forget it from the time I leave Pat's office to go to the men's room. So I don't even get in when I have the code.
There you go.
Pretty sick, I would know the code.
The next item on our agenda is a resolution regarding an award for professional engineering services. Eric, Pat, have you introduced Eric to
No,
the
not yet.
board?
I thought this would be a good time. So, and by the way, Alice, I'm sorry you weren't able to talk yourself out of a job as chairman, but congratulations and condolences all at the same time. Yeah, so we had a capital committee meeting a little while back, and some of you got to meet Eric Schuler, who is replacing Dick Goody. Eric is straight across the table from me, a handsome young man in the dark blue shirt right across the table from me. Dick Goodney, as you probably all know, has now formally retired. His last day on the job was a week ago from this past Friday. In the meantime, we were fortunate enough to find Eric Schuler through a job search. Eric is obviously a PE and has experience in both the private consulting sector with Barton LaJudas, and more recently was the city engineer from the city of Oneida, and has broad-ranging public sector experience as well. So Eric came on starting January 4th. Dick Goodney was gracious enough to stay to the end of the month, so they were able to overlap for 4 weeks and provide for a smooth transition. But from this point forward, you'll be dealing with Mr. Schuler, and Eric was at the Capital Committee meeting and is fully versed on this, so I'm going to turn it over and let you walk the board through this.
Perfect. With this item, it's just for an engineering assessment at Southern Reservoir Number 2. It's pretty standard fare. The entity that we're looking to award this to, Gomez and Sullivan, they're a local outfit here. I'm sure you've seen them on agendas in the past. And this is essentially to fulfill a DEC requirement for this reservoir. We're required to undergo an engineering assessment at reservoirs that we own, manage, and maintain every certain amount of years. So this just pretty much checks the box and we move forward.
And I might add, this came out of the capital committee. It was voted out of committee for recommendation to the board.
Correct. Anybody have any questions regarding this proposed resolution? Someone care to move the resolution?
I'll move it.
Yeah. Rocco.
Thanks, Rich. Second?
Rich, Rocco, okay.
Yep.
Okay,
Second it, no one has.
Yeah, we have it. Yep.
Any further comments, questions, or concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Oh, there's Dave. All right.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is a resolution regarding an award of construction contract for Bleecker Street water main replacement.
All right, I'll give you an introduction to this just because it kind of originated before Eric came on board. And as an informational piece, I also need to point out that we did this on authorization from the chairman back in December. So this is actually a vote to essentially reaffirm an award that we did under the authority of the chairman. This was a water main that was washed out during the Halloween storm, 2 years ago, and was eligible for FEMA reimbursement. We have a long list of projects that are on the list for FEMA, and as you may recall, when we finished the bonding last summer, we included $500,000 in the bonds, which would be our matching share for any and all FEMA eligible projects, so that any one that they approve on a rolling basis, we would have the matching funds. FEMA will be paying for 88% of the cost of this project. The total cost is at $37,450. So after the 88%, our share is only $4,494. So basically $4,500 out of pocket. But we have to do the work first, pay the money up front, and then wait to get reimbursed. However, there was a deadline. It needed to be completed by May. Dick Goodney at the time wasn't sure that we'd have it awarded and what the weather would look like, and we didn't want to take a chance on missing the deadline to get the reimbursement. So based on that, Chairman D'Elia gave us the okay to go ahead and award it and get started, so we didn't jeopardize the reimbursement. And we decided that we would then ask the board to reaffirm that decision through this resolution tonight. And Eric, did I miss anything? Is there anything you want to add to that?
Nope, this project needs to be completed prior to us starting the Welsh Bush tank rehab. So that's also why
That's
we're
the
trying
other
to get it
factor.
done soon. Yep.
And this was also discussed during the capital committee meeting.
And I would only add that we were faced with a time that was of the essence situation, but also this was discussed during our budget process. So it was something the board had already looked at in the overall view of the FEMA reimbursements. Otherwise, I never would have allowed them to go forward with it.
Yep, good point.
Ellis, I'll make motion that we.
You second?
Dave,
I'll second.
Dave and Denny.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Next item will be the quarterly investment report.
Yes.
Is Jim in there someplace?
Yes.
Right here.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah, it's not on
Hey,
your,
Jim.
right, it's not on your agenda, but we do have and I think you have it in your packets. It
Yes.
was sent to you, so it's our fourth quarter, so it's our annual investment statement. And just as a reminder, public authorities law requires that we provide you a statement on a quarterly basis. So this is for the full year, showing investment balances, any income that was earned, and any expenses that were paid. So again, this is for the fourth quarter. I just wanted to point out that You can see on the second page that we had $246,000 of income for the year. We had actually budgeted $289,000. The big reason for that is the economic shutdown and also the market that tanked during March, April time period. So we fell a little short on that.
Any questions for Jim regarding this?
How does that affect our total budget?
I was going to go into that during the financial report. I can show you some
Okay.
numbers real quickly.
That's all right, I'll defer to that.
Okay.
Do we need a motion on this, Jim?
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks, Bruce. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. Any further discussion regarding this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. All right, Jim, the finance report?
Yes. So I was going to give you just about four numbers, groups of numbers that will, on a cash basis, kind of tells you how we did for the year for 2020 compared to 2019. Water sales for the year, we collected 21.7 million compared to last year, 22 million. So about a $300,000 reduction. Now that doesn't include other penalties and such. So total water receipts, which includes fees and penalties, 23.8 million compared to 24.4 million. So we were less by $600,000 compared to 2019. However, operating costs, 2020, 10.2 million compared to 11 million in 2019. So as you recall, back in April-May time period, we reduced spending, we curbed a lot of the spending, so we were able to actually reduce it down about $800,000. Total operating costs, 22.7 compared to 23.7 the prior year. So we actually and that includes pilots and everything else. So we're able to curb spending by $1 million. So to answer your question, we were able to actually end the year in the positive about $300,000 to $400,000. So it actually, even with the economic shutdown, COVID, we ended up doing pretty well considering. The only other number, consumption, we were down 3.5% for the year. So,
Excellent job, Jim.
yes, considering all that happened, I think we did okay.
Agreed, Jim. Any questions for Jim regarding all this?
Nope.
Great. On to you, Pat.
Okay, I have a couple items I want to update you on. First is something that's become rather urgent over the last 2 weeks or so. With the snow and the freezing cold temperatures, the watershed is now pretty much frozen. So the effect of that is that the inflows into the reservoir get choked off this time of year. It usually happens. In the fall, we were running pretty low, and then we had an early snowfall that melted and some rain, and the reservoir came up almost 19 feet, and we all sighed a big sigh of relief. After that point, Canal Corp was following the operating diagram, and we were losing about 5 feet every week and a half or so. So we are now down below elevation 1200. Prior to that, when we got to about 1205, I reached out to the Canal Corporation hydrologist Howard Goebel, which is a name some of you might remember.
Very well.
Asked what the plan was.
Try not to.
Yeah, I know. I asked what the plan was. At that time, they were going to continue following the operating diagram. You may recall that when they release less and deviate, they now have to either make it up to Brookfield Power with higher flows, or they have to make it up in dollars. And the dollars are calculated by whatever the flow rate equates to based on electric prices at any given time. So they recently decided that they would not deviate from the operating diagram and slow the flows down. A week later, which was last week, I reached out again, got an answer that they still were not going to slow it down. We're now at elevation 1196. However, I have reached out to our county executive, Oneida County executive, I should say, Tony Pacenti, who is on the NIPA board. And Tony is attempting to intervene. And I talked to him Friday. I reached out again today. I'm waiting to hear back. But we're running a repeat of several years ago, 2015. It got down very low at this time of the year. We were having at that time 5 or 6 water main breaks a day. You may recall we were hiring contractors to keep up with them, and we were trying to pull more water through the treatment plant, and the system, the system was demanding more water through the plant than we could provide, I should say. So we came very close to having to bypass the water treatment plant and put the whole system on a boil water advisory. We're trying to avoid that now. I've made that pretty clear both to Howard Goebel and to Tony Pacenti that our safety margin is rapidly declining as it goes lower. So I'm hoping that Tony can get some results from them. The diagram does call for a cutback if it drops just a little bit lower. The target elevation level based on the settlement agreement is 1195, but we know that they have violated that in the past. So this is something that we're working on internally here with our senior staff, and I'm in pretty much continual communication now with the county executive's office and with Howard Goebel. There is a conference call scheduled for Wednesday as part of the communication protocol because we did hit one of the trigger levels that requires these weekly phone calls. So we're hoping we'll get some cooperation and we'll be able to stabilize it before it gets much worse. Fortunately, the water main breaks are pretty much under control right now. We're averaging somewhere around 20 million gallons, 21 million gallons a day. Is it less than that?
It's less than that.
It's a little less than that.
Yeah.
The problem we had a couple of years ago was at this time of year, we were running up around 25 to 26 million gallons a day, which was the maximum we could get out of the system at that elevation from the reservoir. So we're not in an emergency situation yet, but we've made it pretty clear that it's obviously foolish to wait till we're in an emergency before we stabilize the water level. So I'll keep you posted. If it gets worse and deteriorates, I'll certainly be reaching out to the chairman and the board leadership to see what next steps we might want to take. But hopefully we can avoid that. But at this point, I wanted to let you know about it. And we have communicated. It's all documented just in case we do end up in something more than just a conversation about it. But as I said, I'll keep you posted. Next item I wanted to bring up, we got some pretty frightening news that came out of the federal level. The EPA has now promulgated the new regulations for the what's called the lead and copper rule. And we knew they were going to be lowering the allowable level of lead in the water. They did drop it somewhat, but there's a whole range of onerous burdens that are now placed on water systems such as us for additional testing. And we think with the lower level, we may be forced to begin replacing some services right off the bat, lead services. There's a list of probably 12 new things that are in it. Eric Schuler and I and Phil and Ann Miligrano and some others, I think Jim Mack, Jim Corfanta, will be sitting through a webinar in the next 2 days just to get a better handle on it. But one way or the other, it's going to cost us probably $300,000 to $400,000 beginning as early as next year to begin doing this extra sampling. It may require additional personnel to be hired to manage the sampling and go into houses to do certain survey work that needs to be done. There's a lot of outreach they're going to require us to do, and essentially we're heading into a very big challenge right now. So I'll use that as a segue into the next informational item, which is that we have hired a company called Corona Environmental to look at our water quality and our corrosion control technique, but they are also doing work for the Village of Ilion to look at their system and try to at least figure out the chemistry of what happens when our water begins flowing through the pipes down in Ilion. Obviously, we want to know ahead of time if there's any changes in treatment that have to happen, what's going to happen with lead services down there, so that we don't repeat what happened in Flint, Michigan, which is when they changed water sources with doing absolutely no testing of chemistry. And we all know what happened there. In fact, it was the situation in Flint, Michigan that put us all in this bind with the EPA and all this new challenging lead stuff. I can tell you that this is, in my view at least, purely a political reaction to Flint, Michigan. The cost-benefit analysis doesn't justify the cost that they're going to make us do for what would be probably an almost immeasurable benefit in public health as a result of all this. Nevertheless, I bring up Corona Environmental because a little change occurred with them that we did discuss with Ken Bobrow, and that is that Corona needed to have an operation here in New York to be approved by the New York State Health Department to do this work. And so they created a subsidiary corporation in New York. So we are now technically doing business with their subsidiary, but it's really the same company. And we discussed with Ken whether the board needed to reauthorize and reaffirm the award of that contract with this other business entity in name only. Ken said no, it's essentially the same company, but we ought to just point it out to the board as an informational fact. Phil, did I miss anything in that?
No.
Okay, so essentially it's an informational
What's the
item.
name of the subsidiary?
I'm sorry? Oh, the name of the subsidiary is called what, Phil?
Corona Environmental Engineering of New York.
Okay, so it's essentially the same company. They added of New York to the end of the name. So it's Corona Environmental Engineering of New York. So we're dealing with their subsidiary, and Ken just thought we should point out, for informational purposes, that we're now dealing with their subsidiary. It doesn't significantly change the award of the contract in any way. So it doesn't require board action in Ken's opinion. Just wanted to let you know. That all ties together with the lead thing. The last thing I wanted to mention is that we were doing some work down at our facility, our maintenance facility on Kemble Street, that involved some digging to install a new staircase, and we ran into some contamination. There was underground contamination. Bruce, you look surprised by this, but we discussed this at the Capitol meeting. So this is a refresher for those of you at Capitol Committee. What happened was that years ago they used to allow underground storage tanks for petroleum products. So our predecessor, the Utica Board of Water Supply, operated these tanks through to probably the 50s, 60s, and 70s before they were, everybody was required to start taking them out in the 80s. And obviously these tanks leaked. So whether it was heating oil, whether it was gasoline, diesel fuel, there's a whole variety of tanks that people had underground. And as we were doing some soil borings to put in footings for the stairwell, we hit this plume of contamination. So our HR director, who also acts as a sort of a environmental compliance officer, has a relationship with environmental cleanup companies, notified both the DEC and an environmental company, and we did at that point a whole series of investigations to decide the size of the plume and how to clean it. We removed, I don't know, I think about 12, dump trucks, 10-wheel dump trucks, large loads of contaminated soil that then had to be treated and taken out by this environmental cleanup company. At this point, the DEC is satisfied that our property is cleaned up adequately. It's since been backfilled with stone and paved over. Our yard is now clean, so the good news is that in future generations, anyone doing work on that property can do it safely without any risk. The downside is that it looked like it migrated a little bit onto the private property behind us, which is essentially that grocery store. It used to, at one time, was Cristiano's. I'm not even sure what it is today. But we're going to need to do some cleanup over there as well. Unfortunately, it became costly. Right now, we're into it for about $130,000 in cleanup costs, and we had bills to pay for the environmental cleanup company that trucked all this stuff out of there. So, again, in conversation with Chairman D'Elia back in December, he authorized us to use the Repair and Improvement Fund, which is can be tapped at the discretion of the chairman. You may recall, some of you that have been on the board for a while, that there's a statutory requirement for us to maintain a balance of at least $500,000 in that account at all time. However, with the trustee down in New York at the Bank of New York, they don't distinguish between that fund and any of the other reserves that we've set up and show as subsidiary accounts on our own journals. So it's all in one pot of money with the trustee, and that balance is closer to $4 million. So the fact that we drew some out doesn't put us below $500,000, so we don't have to have any kind of plan to refund it and show the trustee that the money's going to go back in to achieve that minimum balance. But we did have to draw it down. We did so under the chairman's authorization, and we will be making a request. I'm working on putting that together now, but I'm still waiting for some final numbers to at least forward something over to our representatives in the state legislature in both the Senate and the Assembly to see if there's a possibility that they can either try to figure out how to get some brownfield money for us, or at least get something through some kind of member item for at least a partial reimbursement, if not a full reimbursement. Obviously, none of that's going to happen until the state finds out what they're going to be getting from the federal government as far as part of this next COVID bailout package. So I don't expect any immediate decision, but we will be sending a request over to them very shortly. If there's any questions on that, we'd be obviously happy to take those as well. But it was an unexpected expense that we just kind of literally ran into or dug into. And so at least we now have a problem that's been cleaned up for future relief. That's all I have for now, unless there's any questions of me, I'll be happy to take them.
I was displeased with having to do this because it cuts into the clubhouse fund for Hinckley. When you take from the chairman's fund and do these kinds of things.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does, unfortunately.
So you
Okay,
got,
Mr. Sears.
So that's all I have, unless, as I said, if there's any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Thanks, Pat.
Yep.
Any old business?
Nope.
Any new business?
I thought we had something.
We do. And we do have an executive
Just have
session.
one real quick question, if I may.
Yep.
Sure.
I wanted to inquire as to the status of the pipe replacement on Oxford Road. I know Eric's new on the job, may not be too familiar with it, but I was wondering, is that still on schedule to get done? It had been scheduled for last fall, but I know some things happened and COVID and everything else, so I don't know if Eric can shed any light on that or not.
Sure, we actually just got the additional survey area that I know Dick had pushed forward at the end of last year. So we just received those CAD drawings, and a couple of our engineering staff, they're starting to lay out the drawings for, I guess, Department of Health approval. I had my first review through it last week, so my hope is another 2 weeks we'll be able to do a site walkthrough and then talk about getting it to Department of Health for approval at that point. And depending on when we get Department of Health approval, we'll likely be going out to bid for that. Looks like it might be too much for us to do in-house right now.
Okay, so anticipated date to start digging, guessing?
Where are we right now? February?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if it's by June. I would be surprised, but we'll push for by June if we can. Ideally, for a project there, you would want to wait until school's done. I know there's a lot of hybrid learning right now, so not everybody's at school, but digging on that area of Oxford with buses, it'd be ideal to wait till right after school's done.
How far is that pipeline going? How much are we putting in?
It's looking to be, it kept expanding. Right now it's looking to be about 2,500 feet. Down to, I believe the road is, I don't think it's Elmhurst. I'm not well versed on the side streets off of Oxford there.
By the way, I should
I
mention.
believe it's supposed to go to Hoffman or so.
I'm sorry.
Hoffman? That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, it's right down near there.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I didn't point out, by the way, when I introduced Eric, that he's actually a native of Utica, went to Proctor High School, right?
Yep.
So he's very familiar with the area, and there's going to be very little to no learning curve as far as the geography of our system goes. And he's actually been very busy studying the hydraulics and getting to know the system quite rapidly. So, but he knows the area quite well, and most of the major corporations and everything here. So I think he's going to fit right in very well.
Very good, thank you.
Any other questions? We need a motion to go into executive session regarding a personnel matter.
Bruce, second by Rocco.
Did we get anybody?
Yeah, we got a first and a
I'll
second.
make the motion.
We have them.
We got it.
Any discussion on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Anybody opposed?
We're just gonna take a minute.